stage already, but I didn't have a chance to introduce myself. So I'm Jovita Gabriene. Mainly, I'm a litigation lawyer, so it means that I always deal with the problems. I rarely get a chance to deal with the problems before they arise. And I like dealing with the problems, but what I also like is, to prevent the problems. And I was looking for an area that would be very interesting for me, where I could be helpful with preventive side of my work. And I chose, some of the creative industries. One of them is fashion industry. I got really, really interested into that industry. I got communicated with the people, and I realized that in Lithuania we don't have, at least a few years ago, we didn't have any discussions on the FashionTech. So we started online, and as Zoltan said, these discussions were a huge success. We used to have quite many impressive international speakers. We had an audience with the questions, and I'm very, very glad that for the first time we have a chance to meet here live in Lithuania. So on my panel I have, how many? 5 people. So I will introduce them just very shortly, and then I will allow them to introduce themselves. So actually, member number 1 of the panel, it's Indrė Viltrakytė. She is co-founder of the Kalinkinas Fashion House, and also she's now dealing with the NFTs. So going straight away, Indrė, can you tell a little bit more of what you do and what's your relation to the fashion and technology?
Hello. Open.
Should be.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm super happy to be here. And since fashion is really a niche industry, and especially fashion tech, so I'm really excited that we have people speaking about it, thinking about it, and gathering together finally live. So thank you for having me again. I'm an undercover lawyer, as many of you are, and never really worked as one, so always in the creative side of businesses. For the past more than 10 years, I've been in fashion industry as a co-founder of Robert Kalinkin Fashion House in Lithuania, relatively known in the region for the fashion clothing that we produce. And last year, I've been working in turning that into a digital fashion house. So basically bridging in real life and digital fashion with the Rebels brand, which is an NFT venture that we started this January. And our goal is to reinvent what fashion industry and fashion brands can be via the blockchain technology.
Okay, so thanks a lot. So in case I would like to have an NFT from the Rebels brand, so where should I go and where could I get one?
The primary sale already happened in January, and all the 10,101 NFTs were sold.
So I can't no longer, or is it a secondary market?
You can in a secondary market, such as OpenSea, looks for all the other secondary markets. They just represent the NFTs, they don't hold them. So in any secondary marketplace, you can buy them.
Okay, so that's interesting. I'll check for one. Then we have another lawyer who is also undercover lawyer, who is now currently working as a businesswoman. So it's Akvilė Meškauskaitė-Dobars, and she's co-founder of the Naughty Ones. I think everyone knows here in Lithuania the Naughty Ones. It's a famous and now international brand of the hand-knitted sweaters. Am I correct?
Yes, thank you, Jovita. Actually, I didn't plan to mention that I'm an undercover lawyer, which is right this out. I graduated from law school and had a few years in legal field, but then at the same time I was co-founding sustainable knitwear brand, the Naughty Ones, and since business was growing, I decided to stay full-time there and grow it even more. So legal is a bit in the past, but also in the present, since every business requires a legal aspect, and it's really useful knowledge to have. So my relationship to fashion and technology. As a brand, we operate in fashion industry. However, 95% of our sales comes from digital channels. So it's unavoidable that we as a brand use technology every day to connect with our consumers, connect with our community, to personalize the messages, and etc. and etc. So it goes hand in hand to both fashion and technology for us.
Okay, thank you. Then we have a lawyer who has not left legal profession. It's Kamila Valatkaitė. She is legal counsel at Vinted, but still she has a relation to fashion and technology, I presume, every day. Can you tell us a bit more?
Correct. So, hi everyone. My name is Camila, and yes, I'm a legal counsel. So, I work at Vinted, and I guess like in the Lithuania, Vinted is well known as the first Lithuanian unicorn, which now has been evaluated with 3.5 billion. So, I'm very glad to be working in this kind of company. And what it is a marketplace for second-hand fashion items, and with a very sustainable mission to make sustainable consumption the first choice worldwide. And there is lots of aspects of the technology that is involved, and looking from the users, which we have over 50 million, and we are operating in different markets, so expansion and growth, so technology is every single day.
So we're glad to have you here, and we have one non-lawyer, so it's Vilius Jastremskas. He is Chief Partnership Officer at Limpo. So he's basically also dealing with technology every day, and a very advanced one. So Vilius, can you tell us more? Why you are not a lawyer, first of all? And then, you know, what's your relation to fashion and technology?
I'm feeling insulted right now.
I'm sorry, just a joke.
No, so thank you, Jolita, for inviting. Thank you, Zoltan. So I'm a Chief Partnership Officer at Limpo. My relation to fashion is not that much. Probably I'm not the most fashionable person in here. However, I work for the blockchain company, Limpo. It's an NFT sport minting platform. We are part of Mocha Brands Group, which is currently 5 unicorn valued company at 5 billions. Basically what we do, we provide digital property rights to the users and especially to the gamers in this world, and NFT and blockchain technology is something what we are very passionate about.
So thank you, Vilius, a lot, and I'm really glad to have you here because you deep down in the NFTs industry. Later on, you can tell us. And also we have Ekaterina. She already introduced herself, but in this panel, she is also taking part not only as ex-regulator, as legal counsel, but also I chose her as very well-informed user of the fashion because she kept posting, you know, things on Facebook. I know she has an avatar of her own. She likes digital clothing. So we will check, you know, whether the commercial initiatives are working. Can you tell us a bit more? What's your relation to fashion and tech?
Yeah, again, we just agreed with Jolita that I will be just an ordinary user of fashion and tech, and I will probably help Jolita challenge all of you guys regarding the fashion transition into tech, whether it's actually a good trajectory or whether it will happen like full tech, fashion tech. So and my relationship with fashion is like, yeah, I love fashion. That's it. Yeah.
So, you know, when you say that it's fintech and fashion tech, actually it's something very different because fintech is entirely regulated industry and the fashion tech is a vague concept, you know, because, well, it implies many things within this concept. So, but I really like this concept of fashion tech because not so long time ago, you know, some of the companies managed not to have even the presence online. So pandemics has changed that even the smallest shop has its presence online. And now this business is very diverse. We have a very diverse panel. We have Vinted here, it's second-hand clothing. We have sustainable business naughty ones. We have Robert Kalinkin, you know, which is also dealing with NFTs as well. So this business is changing greatly. And all this variety also is represented within the business over here. So I don't know how many of you have read recently, there was a McKinsey report published on the state of fashion technology. So for those who are interested in this sector, I would suggest to read it. I reviewed that report and decided, you know, to go through the main aspects that are being discussed worldwide. So sustainability is definitely the one to be discussed a lot. and now it's not only the concept, actually the investors are saying that they're gonna invest to the companies which actually do have technology in place that would ensure sustainability. So here I think this question should go to Vinted first, to Camilla, and what's your take on this? What place sustainability now does have in fashion, and what more could be done with the help of technology?
So I would break this question into two parts. So first part, like for me speaking as a lawyer, so for every kind of business, not only Vinted, to be the compliant business, it's a very tough task. And when you have to follow all the rules to protect your users from privacy perspective, from in general like consumers' rights, and then going into more expanded to looking that it would be sustainable business as well, going through the due diligence, not of your own company, but with the vendors you're working with. So it becomes a huge challenge, and then it's not possible for every single person that's working in the company to do that. We need to implement certain tools and processes that would work for you and that would help. So this is the technology that comes inside of the company. Looking from other perspective, of course, it's like Vinted needs to like sustainability. I would break in three things: that reduce, reuse, recycle. And at the moment, Vinted is kind of going with a reuse aspect, but we also are evaluating in general the supply chain and all of the other parts like the logistics, the packaging, you know, and what is happening in that supply chain and how we can make more efficient and more sustainable.
And am I correct that in all these processes the technology is also involved?
Yes, of course. First of all, it comes all the human ideas, and then we have to use the technology to help to make this in the impact.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. There's also, an opinion that fashion going more digital from the real world could, reduce the overconsumption. So my question probably would be to Indre. Your fashion house is going, from like the real world clothing to some kind of digital clothing or digital NFTs. So do you believe, is it one of the ways how the fashion business can become more sustainable? Like, from buying an actual dress to going to some digital? What's your comment on this? Is all these things with the metaverse coming up, will it have an impact to sustainability? What's your point?
I think it will have, but not as soon as we now probably think, and not on as grand of scale as we now are reading on the headlines, I think. Because when I was researching this topic prior to this conference, I found quite a lot of thoughts on how digital fashion could impact the overconsumption. And some of them being, for example, reducing the travel to fashion weeks. There are more than 100 fashion weeks in the world. And for example, the trying on of clothes. I think that's one of the most like the billion-dollar question that you need to solve, and people in technology were trying to solve that for many, many years, like how to reduce the returns on fashion industry, which is up to 25%, I think, after the corona thing. And blockchain is not needed for those things to be solved, because blockchain technology is not that. Like if we are talking about NFTs and Web3 as blockchain, all it is like a verifiable asset that you can use in certain games or certain environments online. But what can Web3 help in is the therapy aspect of fashion. Like we do shop as a therapy.
For pleasure, you mean?
Yes, for pleasure, for vanity. Let's call it like that. And if we can exchange like real shopping with the digital shopping, and if that gives us same pleasure and same experience and same satisfaction, then we can definitely lessen the consumption, because we can change our clothes 20, 100 times a day if we want to for our avatars.
So actually, you have touched a few very interesting aspects about the technology. I know the topic is enormously broad, so we will not be able, to touch many aspects in depth. But for example, with the trying on solutions, so actually the technologies have a solution. So for example, the virtual try on, I personally myself tried, a lipstick virtually. Actually, I do like it. Well, I myself belong, by the way, to the 60% of European population which actually like to shop in actual stores, to touch the garments, etc., etc. But at the same time, I do like, the virtual try on. So you can try virtually now the watch, the lipstick, the glasses, etc. So that's actually a technology which reduces the returns, because once you buy online, the amount of returns is huge, and there's always transportation costs involved, so the footprint, etc., etc. So there's a technology in place. It's actually interesting. And here I wanted to go then maybe to Ekaterina, as as the informed user. Do you consider sustainability when making a choice? And also, do you see any technology in place which you consciously like to use as as a user? Do you see this actually happening, or is it just behind the scenes somewhere?
Yeah, maybe I will start with a story about the दिन that I was selling my daughters some clothes. It was a dress or a coat, I don't remember, but I was selling it for 10 euros probably. And I was so struggled to answer all these questions that I got from other mothers regarding the size, the fit, and the color, and so on. So it took me, I don't know, maybe an hour average. I'm not talking about sending the clothes, the times that it took me, but it took me 1 hour to just answer these questions. Yes, yeah, so just coming back to the point that this all trying on clothes and so on solutions, so I think that it would contribute to the not only sustainability but to our nerve system probably. Yes, but continuing with your questions, personally, I don't know. I think that I don't consider sustainability as a factor when choosing whether I buy clothes from H&M or some other brand, at least directly. Yes, probably, I don't know, maybe unconsciously I'm still considering it, but it's not a factor when choosing for me the clothes, whether the brand is sustainable or not. So I don't believe that the pressure to be sustainable will come from user side. But I believe
you are on the rear side, because in all the marketing reports, everyone claims that the companies are experiencing huge pressure, namely from the customers. So it's interesting whether it is exaggerated in a way, or it's actually so.
It depends on the societies again. Maybe in very well-developed societies, the sustainability is a factor for the society when choosing, not the price probably. Yes, in Lithuania, I guess the price is the main factor when you choose whether you pay this premium for a sustainable brand or you choose the cheaper option. So it may depend on society. I think that we are not there yet. But again, I'm speaking from my own perspective, not from this global, not global, but Lithuanian-wide society perspective. Yeah, I wanted to touch on another aspect, but I forgot it.
So once you remember, you may come back and just simply jump in. So now we speak a lot, because we will not discuss all these fancy technologies, that reduce the waste of water when dyeing jeans, etc., etc. It's not the topic of this conference. But maybe I wanted to ask Akvilė from the Naughty Ones, because she has a business which is being called Sustainable, and do you actually need any technology to make it sustainable? Whether it's about technology or is it about something else?
I firstly would like a little bit add on the discussion that you, Ekaterina, started about the pressure of consumers about sustainability. So I would just like to share the experience that we as a brand have. So we actually receive a lot of pressure from our community. They ask questions: who made their clothes, what materials we use, and I think that in order for the whole change to happen, sustainability, it's unavoidable that consumers need to pressure. They need to vote with their money, but at the same time, business needs to do their part as well. So it's like a balanced play between the two parties. And coming back to the question, yes and no. Perhaps you can, just open a small boutique shop here in Vilnius, buy natural fabrics and sell to local community and be sustainable. But when we talk about impact and sustainability, impact on large scale is a must. And for that, I don't see a way how we can do it without the technology. The question also is, what kind of technology? Does it have to be the top-notch, the most fancy one, the complicated one, or it can be a simple technology? And from our business aspect, that I can see that different technology can solve and contribute to different sustainability goals. For example, the same simple social media apps, it allows us to hear the voice of our communities, what they want in terms of sustainability, and apply it to our business. Then we have our third-party partners who allows us to use more complex technology, let's say, of our recycled packaging, which is a biotechnology packaging made from the mix of corn and various other chemicals that allows the packaging to biodegrade naturally in 6 months. So to answer the question, I believe that technology, is the thing that in the first place created this mess in a way that we need to have sustainability goals, but it's also probably the key to resolving those issues.
Well, actually, I didn't realize up to this moment, that actually it's the technology that created this many problems. But this is true, and now let's hope it's gonna solve them. Okay, so on the sustainability, we could talk, for an hour or more. There's another fancy word which is, always mentioned within the topic of fashion, and not only fashion. So it's the metaverse. And there are very interesting forecasts basically saying that in the 5 upcoming years, it's going to be the one biggest opportunity for the fashion brands since the appearance of the e-commerce. So there was a time when you could have your presence without the e-commerce, and now basically you cannot. And people say that you will be nowhere if you will not be in the metaverse within 5 years. So there is just a saying. There are also skeptics who say that, this hype will fade away, and what we are witnessing now is going to remain interesting only for the small part of the public. So here I want to turn to Vilnius. I presume he is a meta-optimist, but I'm not sure. So what's your take on this? Do you believe in this metaverse, that we are all moving there bit by bit, and how it's going to develop?
So firstly, I'm more a believer that people should own their data rights, and they should own their digital activity, which technology of blockchain is providing us through the principle of NFTs, and we already saw a lot of successful use cases, because right now what's happening in the Web 2, we our content is owned by platforms. It's owned by all those monopolism, Facebook, Twitter, and we are actually not controlling that. Same if going forward to the game environment, there are a lot of big corporations who launch their metaverse games, but actually people spend billions every year on that, and if one of those companies, they go into bankruptcy, people lose everything they spend. So they're hiring, but they're not owning, and they're only using those luxury brands, clothes, avatars in that space. And going even further back, there was this very legendary phrase by Bill Gates, like, content is a king, which he spotted that the internet obviously can reduce the cost of transportation, but in reality, what happened right now, the cost of distribution increased. So obviously, if you want to advertise your brand in social networks, you have to pay ads, you have to basically get bigger audience, and once again, that data is being used by the platforms and for their privilege. Obviously, goods and services, they benefit in some way, but in this metaverse world, obviously, what is everyone is trying to create is open metaverse, that actually the ownership of goods, of clothes belongs to the end consumer. So now, in terms of the thoughts, I just hope that everything will open up even more. We don't know when this is gonna happen. It can happen. Technology moving so quickly, everything changes so fast. It can happen in 3, 4, and 5, maybe in 10 years. But that there would be this asset validation between metaverses, freedom of movement between platforms, and that more big tech companies, they will come into that, and like there will be obviously user will be then the asset holder, not the platform. And in terms of the luxury brands, there was a lot of interesting studies already done in centralized metaverses that people, especially young generation, they are more likely to buy branded clothes, branded shoes, whatever. And yeah, it just shows probably where we are going with this and how it impacts luxury world.
Well, for those who are unaware, it's the things are already happening because fashion business is going into gaming business, into music business as well. So, for example, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the game that was launched by the Louis Vuitton has exceeded all the possible expectations, and has a number of gamers that we can't imagine. So things are actually happening, and these businesses are really blending. And maybe Camilla, you have a comment, regarding the metaverse. Is it a hype?
If we look at it from like perfect world perspective, we have a metaverse, we have this avatar where you can try your own clothes, in a very secure and, like you say, from privacy perspective, so maybe we would avoid these problems as a measurements. And also there is a huge data in the digital world that is consumed from different platforms, from e-commerce and from blockchain, and to make kind of results and of that data, so it will be more efficient, more sustainable. And I do believe that from the optimistic and positive side of the technology. However, when you come into the real world where you are, and when you are evaluating your users, and your clients, your consumers, it depends from which business you're coming from. So if we talk about the luxury brands, when the certain goods cost quite a lot, and your consumers, they know what is the cryptocurrencies, and they are aware of this metaverse, and then you compare the consumers which are buying second-handed goods for 2-5 euros, on Vinted, then it's a huge gap where I see that this is the considerations which is needed for the further investments and looking into this technology to go with it very fast, or maybe wait a little bit and see where it goes and then jump into it when it's...
So basically what you are saying that it's not for every business. It's because let's say in the case of Vinted, you are dealing with actual clothing, and basically they are used not only for fashion purposes but also for the utility purposes. So probably that utility side is gonna stay on land because you still need a warm jumper. It's Lithuania, we have winter here. So probably the outcome could be that it's not for every business.
Exactly. So I'm positive thinking, however, a bit skeptical for which it could be applied.
Okay, thank you. And I want to ask Katerina, maybe now not as a user of fashion, but maybe as a legal advisor, what challenges are waiting in terms of cryptocurrencies that circulate within the metaverse? What should the users be aware of? What are your comments on this? Do we have, a need for higher regulation, etc.?
Yeah, if I may just to continue on metaverse, I just always think in terms of examples. Yes, I think that the main question we need to answer whether we will have this virtual reality, yes, in parallel of our actual lives. Yes, as you said, you still need your body to feed your body, to put clothes on, and so on. So yes, we will still use probably these physical things, but the question is whether we will spend more time in virtual reality. And my answer is definitely yes. And coronavirus pandemic showed that it is really convenient to have meetings in virtual reality, to have, I don't know, maybe our kids educated in virtual reality. Because nowadays the history lessons they learn from books, but they can actually be in ancient Rome, walk through streets and see things and meet these people, famous people and so on. So I think that the answer to the question whether we will spend more time in virtual reality is yes. And the second question is whether we will want to put on some fancy clothes there to distinguish ourselves from others in some way. And the answer is probably yes. And looking again at my daughter, which is 10 years old right now, she spends quite a time in this gaming.
Probably money, but you just don't know.
Sorry?
Probably money, but you just don't know that.
Might be. But yeah, she asks me to buy her some, to put some artifacts, clothes on her avatar, because she wants to distinguish herself from her peers. So it's, sorry for this long introduction, but I wanted to say that I think that we will have these two worlds working together, the spiritual and the actual world. And coming back to your question on these legal implications and risks and so on, what I see again from real cases is that sometimes we see this mis-selling. Yes, when people buying NFTs, they think that they get some rights, actual rights to some objects and so on, but it appears that they actually don't have these rights. They have some rights to have rights, basically, and it comes to surprise for them that they cannot maybe own some things, to pass some things and so on. So my advice probably for this all of, I don't know, crypto assets and NFTs included industry is for users, consumers to actually understand and to ask questions and understand what you get for these NFTs, what rights it gives to the person, whether it brings intellectual rights with it or no, whether you can again trade it on secondary market or no, whether you can your children can inherit it or no. So these questions are probably the next questions we need to ask.
Well, actually, you turned on very interesting point, of the NFTs, because that's another maybe hype, maybe a trend, and it does imply many legal questions from the IP rights to the contract rights to the, as you say, even inheritance rights. And we could speak as well quite a lot on that. But fashion brands are actually using NFTs. And I was quite interested, to know that they are being used not only as art collectibles, as we understand that mainly NFTs are art collectibles, but fashion brands are using them as digital tokens for the loyalty, so to say, or even as digital twins. So by digital twins, I mean when you buy actual shoes and also you get digital shoes, or when you buy digital shoes and get actual shoes. So it's quite interesting, they are using these NFTs quite differently. And I wanted to ask, who wants to speak on NFTs? Who has an idea what to share? Okay, because there are so many topics on this aspect. So can you tell a little bit more about the NFTs you have and how you promote these NFTs, and what actually I'm buying if I'm buying that NFT?
You mean the Rebels?
Yes, by the Rebels NFTs, yes.
Yeah, because the ones that I personally have, there's a variety of NFTs. Some I buy purely for art, some I buy for utility, some I buy for access. And I think these are some of the main categories that NFTs can represent. So, for example, if you buy purely for art, there is generative art, a whole category, a whole new way of distributing art. So that does not require any utility, you just own it. It's very liquid, it's way easier to sell it if you want to sell it as a piece of art. So it's the advantage of NFTs. And then, for example, our NFTs that we have, it's an access pass. So I see this trend of using NFTs as an access to something, to sort of a utility or some sort of experience, because I spent 4 years analyzing Gen Zers in my previous venture, and one thing I noticed is that they don't want possessions, they want experiences, and they want access to something. So they value this experience that brands can give. So 2 things that fashion brands can now do with NFTs is traditional fashion brands, they can give access, like if we are going already into the luxury, for example, sector, they can give access to their experience, to their brand, and people can feel part of the community, because community is the new king after the content. And for the digital native brands, they can create those experiences with the help of NFTs, and you can be immersed in this virtual world and I don't know, trade it, own it, have it just for pure pleasure or whatever. So it's those are 2 very different ways that brands can use it.
That's actually a very important point which you are making. And here I want to go to Vilnius. Maybe can you tell a little bit more about the activity of Limpo, about the NFTs you have and their different functions maybe? How do you present them?
So in terms of Limpo, we mainly focus on individual sport athletes, clubs, and organizations. So we actually acquire the intellectual property of those athletes and we create their NFTs. There are several purposes of utility. One is that we provide social interaction with the athlete. So in the way like currently we have social medias, and yes, athletes, they can do Instagram live story with the athlete and so on, but they actually cannot really monetize that, their interaction, and it's very beneficial for especially those growing talents in the sports space, that they can basically, it's in a way crowdfunding for them, but in the same way it's a social interaction with their fans. So that's one way. Then the second way is that play to earn games, which became very popular and that's probably the biggest thing what Animoca Brands is doing. So like Limpo, in Limpo case, we are building right now a basketball manager game. If anyone is familiar with basketball or very close with that, like especially in Lithuania, everyone is a basketball coach and everyone is the best general manager. And if something happens, it's a coach fault and that's it. So what we are really doing with that basketball manager game, we allow users to be those basketball coaches in a virtual space, meaning creating their own teams, interacting with live athletes, training their NFTs players, and playing games against each other and winning prize pools. Then we have one other subsidiary, Ref Racing. They have a partnership with Formula One. So for example, their cars are designed from NFTs. So you have to combine like wheels, driver, whatever your body, you have to combine of NFTs, and they have different attributes. So one is faster, one has more agility, and it's actually kind of gives job as well to people. So I know some examples where he invested into the NFTs in that game, and then he hired a driver, and he's paying a monthly salary to the driver who races in that game and basically earns money from that. So that's another utility, and yeah, there are some other ways how you can earn in the primary and secondary market, like in Sandbox, which is also one of our subsidiary projects, and it's probably one or number 2 right now in terms of metaverses. So in Sandbox as well, because I'm project managing that project from the Limpo side, so I had to hire a game studio to create experience for me in Sandbox. So that's again giving jobs to others, to people, creative people, and once again, each asset in their arena, avatar, flower, whatever, it's an NFT which can be sold, which can be used, which has its utility.
So amazing, so many functions, and actually, since the conference is about meeting people and cooperating, so do you see any possibility to cooperate with the fashion brands? Let's say that maybe India, for example, could find a way to cooperate.
So even right now, I mean, we are already negotiating with a few big sport apparel brands. In terms of, because those players that I mentioned in Basketball Manager game, for example, they are dressed in basketball kits. And obviously, as mentioned before, research shows that people want them to buy top clothing brands in the virtual world. So for example, giving an example, we could, on our NFT, we could have Nike logo with the player that he's dressed in Nike kit. So that's our interest, because we are a sport platform. We are more looking into sport clothing and apparels, but other subsidiaries, I know they, like overall in Imoca, they have like 10, 11 different projects, so we have different use cases. So there are definitely a lot of interest in there in luxury sport, like luxury fashion brands.
Okay, that's amazing. I see plenty possibilities of cooperation over here. So we haven't touched, plenty of topics still, because there are many trends like personalization. There are many specifics, which applies only to the luxury. So in case someone has a quick question, we could take one probably, because we are a bit out of time. Yes, please go ahead.
Can I? Do you hear me well?
Yes,
Yeah.
maybe you can stand up, it's gonna be better.
Thank you. So we are here about the topic in the future. So I thought that yes, we might be kind of old-fashioned, but we look at our children and they live in a different reality. So how do you see that approaching that new generation, X, Y, that they might need, let's say, digital fashion parade with the digital models, with the billions of checks for their, salaries, and then becoming an influencer in this fashion world or whatever. But how do you see this future, real future? What innovations maybe you have in your mind already, but they are not realized? Crazy one.
So I think it's gonna be a great, closing sentence for everyone. So thank you for this question. You did the job for me. So can everyone, just come with a short remark on this topic? So it's about the future. Yes, how this future is going to look like, and where our kids are headed, basically. So what's the future gonna be in fashion tech?
From Vinted perspective, I think in general this business at the right time, at the right moment, as I will come back to sustainability topic, because it seems like, maybe it goes into different generations, and maybe even for me, it is like sometimes I'm a bit, I want it, don't want it, I have that in my back of my mind, but there is like a huge request from the younger generations from the sustainable aspect. So I think this will have to be quite important for any type of business.
So the future is gonna be sustainable.
Yeah, I think I would have to agree with Camilla on this point. And I think actually younger generations, they even pressure more to touch the sustainability angle than maybe their parents' generations. And I think this would have to be made in a larger scale in the future. And to add more to your question, I think there were many points touched today. What are the opportunities in the future, and like some from avatars, till to love our sophisticated technologies. But at the same time, probably my takeaway would be that yes, technology would go in hand with fashion. Our children would use it extensively. But I would be also the advocate that technology is not everything, and we still need to remember that we're humans and leave that human touch. And I would like to give an example. So we as a brand, we use lots of technology to personalize and communicate with target audience. But we write them notes when they shop sweaters from us. We write them notes by hand, and these are customized notes. And this is super unprofitable, super inefficient in terms of, when you look, you could just simply print those notes. But we receive so much feedback about those notes, and it's such a personal touch for consumers. So I think that my wish would be that both technology and human aspect would go hand in hand for the future.
Okay. My prediction would be that fashion industry will participate heavily in the creators economy, meaning that it will open the gates for all the smaller actors in there, designers, creators, constructors, and so on and so forth. Because fashion is a heavily standardized industry. It has a lot of rules, and those rules do not change very fast. So a fashion house could have from 2 to up to 16 collections a year. And for this amount of collections and for this cycle, you need immense amount of capital to sustain a brand. So basically what fashion technology and blockchain can do is to help people to cross that barrier and for individual creators to earn money, to earn the living, because I've already seen that happening. Because, for example, one of the utilities of NFTs, which is very practical, is that you earn secondary market royalties. So basically, if you create something great, you are set for life. So you get, like in no other industry, it happens. So basically, if you sell something and that the person who bought it, you sells again, you get pre-programmed royalties, and that's incredible because I've seen like small businesses and just no-name designers already make a living out of that. And that is what I'm manifesting and what we are trying to.
Makes me want to try, maybe I can create something right and be set for life.
Yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, really like the idea Vilnius and Indra touched on that, on this truly decentralized economy where we don't have these big tech companies that basically own data and collect all the benefits. And we are like from us basically. Yes, we don't gain any profit from that. But I want to touch on Anna's question, really interesting one. And I think that again, this future 20 plus will be living in mixed reality, meaning that my grandchildren, hopefully I will have some, they will go to, I don't know, Harvard probably virtually. Yes, they will be able to have this feeling and explore it not only from online, like from the screen, but going through the streets and so on. Probably they will be going on their first date through Tinder or some other brands virtually. Yes, they can meet the person virtually and then decide whether it is clicking or no, and then go physically, actually meeting physically. So I think that these experiences, a lot of experiences, a lot of access to experiences, and said that experiences are the main, thing for the younger generation, that they will have greater access to the different experiences that we or our parents just couldn't imagine that we can get access to.
Thank you. And Vilnius?
So probably I'm gonna stick more to the sports side, but this crazy idea that someone who isn't so talented in the real world, obviously the real world sport and basketball will exist and continue to exist, but will have the same in a virtual world, because there are a lot of examples where someone doesn't have those genetics to be a professional athlete, or he had injuries that he cannot participate, and we have a lot of use cases where someone spends his 20 years on the thing to become professional athlete, and he cannot do that because some circumstances, so that he would have that possibility in the virtual world. So that's it.
Okay, so thank you so much. We are a bit out of time, so please excuse us, but it's a bit interesting topic, so we can continue, not on stage. Thank you.
Thank you.